quite similar into the for each. However, it creates a new array. Okay? So what I mean by this is that it takes an array, and for every item or element in the array, it will apply a function to it or some functionality and then create a new array from it. This is unlike for each, in which, if you remember, or if you want to have a look back, we were just printing out the result each time, sort of like a loop. This will literally create a new array for us. But enough chat, let me get to showing you with code. So the syntax for map looks a little bit like this. We have an array, and then we use map. So once again, I am not making this up. This is a JavaScript method. And then we map to each item in our values array. So for each value, like so. And whatever we do here will affect the value. We then have to store it as a new array of values. Okay, so that is the syntax. Let's get to actually using it in a real life code example. So for this, I'm actually going to use integers for this. I think it will be the easiest to see this with integer values. I'm going to make an array of ages. So this is the ages of everyone in my house. I've got 21. I don't live with this many people, but you know, it's for the sake of the tutorial. So let's just assume I live, let's have a young person there too, in a house with 6 people from the age ranges of 2 to 56. Now, this was the last time I counted everyone's ages. It's been 3 years on exactly from now, and everyone's aged 3 years. So I need to add 3 years to everyone in my array, but I don't just want to console log them out. I actually want to store this in a new array. Okay, so we can say ages, what's 3 years ago from now, 2018, and const ages 2021. So this is what we want. We want const ages 2021. So I would get the ages from 2018. I would use map, and as we said, remember values array. For each value in my array, so I'm going to go with age. For each age in my array, get our arrow function up, and for each age, I want to add 3 years. So now, the console log ages 2021. There we go. I get an array with all the ages updated by 3 years. So that is my household's ages in 2021. So that is a simple example of how to use map. Remember, it does differ from for each because it creates a new array. Have a go at doing map again if you want. Have a go at doing this one. Just make sure you know the difference. It's super, super important. Okay, let's try this out again. This time I'm going to use objects. So to do this, let's create an array of objects. This time I'm going to say housemates. And then let's open up an array. So we know it's an array because we have these 2 square brackets. And in it, let's have our first housemate, our second housemate. Let's just have 3 housemates this time. So I'm just going to do the same that we did before, but this time working with objects. So I'm going to have the name of my first housemate. His name is Ahmed. And his age is going to be 24. So you will see I'm using a string for Ahmed and an integer for the age. Our next housemate is going to be Ellen. And she's going to be 35. And then we have Woody. And his age is going to be 30. So here's my 3 housemates, okay? Each housemate is essentially an object with a name and an age. Now, I'm going to do this again. So housemates 2018. I want us to essentially create a new array of just their ages and making sure these ages are up to date. So 3 years later in 2021. So we need to add +3 to each age. Now, based on what we did before, how do you think we would do this? Just have a pause here, think about it. Remember the syntax that I told you. So map would work with values. We get our values array, and then we map out for each value, use the arrow function and value. So that is the syntax. And don't forget, this creates a new array. So I need to store this as values too. So that's just a separate name. Okay. Hopefully you've had a go at this, or at least thinking about how we would do this. I'm going to show you the solution now. So once again, we would get our old array, housemates 2018, and use map. Okay, so for each housemate, this time we get the housemate because that is the first item is a housemate, or the first object is a housemate. And for each housemate's age, we add 2. So now if I console log housemates 2021, let's have a look. We have indeed added 2 to each age and return that as an array. Okay, so we have got the ages, because for each age we added 2, and that's what we are storing in housemates 2021. Okay, great. That was a little bit more of a complicated example of how to do it with objects. I hope that made a lot of sense. I'm not going to do anything with the DOM for this one, as I don't really feel we need to. But again, if you want to, please do practice this. Please do search online for more examples if you need. I will be using map in some of my tutorials. So once we get a hang of a few more things, we will be doing them as well. So don't worry, you'll have plenty of opportunity to practice the map JavaScript method. Okay, great. I'll see you in the next lesson. In this next section, we are going to be talking about the filter JavaScript method and how it's used. So first off, it is important to explain that the filter JavaScript method is used for, you guessed it, filtering. The method essentially creates a new array, so make a note of that, creates a new array with all the elements that pass the test implemented by the provided function. So what I mean by this is we're going to write some code, and if our array passes the rules in the code, we're going to create a new array with those values. Okay, and then we're going to stick it in here. So for this example, I'm going to start off with an array of shows. I've put in some shows that I'm really into, so Lupin, Cobra Kai, 24, and Mr. Robot. We're going to use filter on this array first off to find out which of these show names is less than 5 characters, so we can put it in this box right here and it fits perfectly. And then we're going to do some more filter work, this time with objects and arrays. So I'm just going to show you the simplest way of using filter. And how I would do this is I would grab the shows array, and then we said that we want to only filter out any string that is less than 5 characters in length. Okay, so let's do that. We can easily filter out every single show name that is less than 5 characters or equal to 5 characters by getting the shows array using filter. So I did not make this up. Filter is a JavaScript method. And then similarly to for each, we would grab the word. So I can call this whatever I want. Okay, I can call this I can call this puppy. It's totally up to you. This is essentially a syntax that essentially means for every element in our array. I'm actually just going to change that back to word. And for every word, we're going to check the length of the word. And if the length of the word equals or so smaller than, that is smaller because this has to be smaller than 5. And then we want to store this in something because As you remember, filter creates a new array. So let's go ahead and store that in display shows, as we are going to be displaying them later on. So we have now stored this new array in something. Let's see if that has worked. So console log display shows. Let's get our console log out. And great. We now have a new array that has stored all the elements in our array that are either equal to 5 or less than 5 in length. By length, I just mean the character count. That is how you would use length on a single string, if you remember back to our previous lessons. So that is how you would use filter. That is a very basic example of how to use filter. For example, I could have equal to 5, and then I would just get Lupin. I could have greater than 5, and then I'd get Cobra Kai and Mr. Robot. And I can do a lot more other things. So that is just one example. Before we go on, I am just going to show it in our display. So once again, how do we do this? Well, if we have a look at our index.html, you will see that the display is what we need to get. So the class of display, because that is that element right here. You'll see that it is styled to be pale violet red. So let's grab our display. We're going to go into the document. We're going to go into the document, search for it using query selector. We did not make that up. That's a JavaScript method. And search for the class of display. And let's store this as const display. Or if we want, we can save it as show display. It is up to us what we save this as. And then we will get the show display and use inner HTML. So the property of inner HTML, I did not make this up, and just assign it the display shows. And there we go. There they are. If we want to style this up a little bit, let's just change the font size. And let's make it 50 pixels. So there's our 3 shows. Okay. Let's move on. Now say instead of an array, we had an array of objects. So I'm just going to console log this out so you can keep it there in case you need it. And of course we don't have any shows for now, so I'm just going to comment this out too. Say we had, so I'm going to do shows again. However, this time it's going to be array of objects. So there's one object, there's another object, and each object is going to be a show object. So this is a more realistic way of how you might see this in a working environment. So you'd have your object, it's going to have the name Lupin. We're going to have series. Well, I know it's got one series, so I'm going to go one integer. Episodes, total 5. Okay? And then I could do the same for all the others. So, Cobra Kai, and its 3rd series, and let's say in total it has 20 episodes or 30 episodes. I'm not exactly sure, but we don't need to be accurate for this. And then let's put 24. Once again, I really can't remember how many series this has, so I'm just going to be making these up. And the last one is Mr. Robot 3, and let's put 24. Okay? So now instead of just working with a simple array like that, I have a much more complicated piece of data to work with. But we can definitely still use filter on it. So I want you to display the shows that have over 2 series in the making. How do you think you would do this? I want you to have a pause here and think about it before we move on. So feel free to get out your code editor, have a mess around. All you need for this is to get something like that and then use filter on this array in order to find all the objects or all the shows that have series of over 2. So it would be these 3 that you need to store in a new array. Okay, I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so the way I would do it is this. Let's go here. I would grab the shows array. I would get the filter JavaScript method. Let's open up, and we know that the syntax would be this show, because each of these is a show, 1 show, 2 shows. Once again, we can call it whatever we want, but for the sake of readability, I've called it show. Now for each show, well, I can't just do length. I need to get the shows series and check if it is larger than 2. And if it is, we want to store it in a new array. So let's just call it display shows again. So now if we console log display shows, I would indeed only get 3 objects back. So Cobra Kai, 24, and Mr. Robot. Okay, great. That is how we would do it. That is the solution to using filter. I think we're ready to carry on. In this section, I want to talk to you about the reduce JavaScript method. Let's do it. The reduce JavaScript method executes a reducer function on each element of the array, resulting in a single output value. What I mean by this is we can use it to essentially add up loads of numbers together. Okay, so that is how the reducer works. We add up loads of numbers. For example, if I get an array of numbers, so const scores, and I want to figure out what my final score is, so I'm just going to put some numbers in here like so. I would get the scores array, get the reduce JavaScript method, and this is the syntax for writing a reducer. Okay, so you have accumulator, you have an accumulator, and the current value. Let's just put that in actual parentheses themselves, and then accumulator plus current value. So that is the syntax for writing a reducer. I'm just going to comment that out so we can keep it at all times. We have something that will accumulate and the current element being processed in the array. So if I show you this with actual code, I'm going to use reduce and then the accumulator, and then I'm just going to put through the exact code that we see above, and let's store it as total. Now if we console log total, we can actually get rid of this because we don't need this. Actually we do, we need the console log. You will see 21. So this is just syntax. You can of course change these to whatever you want for more readability. For example, I might choose to have the accumulator be called total score, and then the current value, so whatever is being processed, is just a score. So I'm just going to put score. Either way, the total will be the same because 5 plus 3 is 8, plus 6 is 14, and then we add 7, which is 21. We can do this on whatever we want. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that'll give us a 4. Essentially, if you use this syntax, so that here, you can get the total of any array of numbers. Okay? So make sure to write that down. It's just syntax. You just need to remember it. Make a note. Okay, now I'm going to actually delete this. And I want you to try adding these numbers together. So, based on what you have learnt so far, you can, of course, oh, what's it not liking there? Come on. You can, of course, refer back to the previous lesson, or if you've made a note, I want you to have a go at writing this in your own code editor. Okay, I want you to add all the numbers together. Please have a go at doing this yourself. Once again, feel free to Google, feel free to go back on your previous lesson, just have a go. Okay, I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so hopefully you've got that. Once again, we would grab the array and we use the reduce JavaScript method. So once again, we are not making this up, and let's get our syntax. So we need one thing here and one thing there. I can call it X and Y, but I really would not recommend that. No one knows what X and Y is. It's not very readable. It doesn't help out other developers reading your code. And then I would simply put X plus Y. And store this as total, and it's console log total. And there we go. We get the total of these 4 numbers. If we want to check if this works, let's make something easier. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And indeed, we get a 4. So as I mentioned, I really wouldn't call this X and Y. I've just done it this way so you can see that it really doesn't matter what we put at these 2 values and what we put here. But this is how I would name it: total and score. So we're talking about each individual score, and it's accumulating onto here each time. Okay, it's going bam, add, 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 until we get a total. So there we go. That is the reduce JavaScript method. In this next section, I want to talk to you about the every JavaScript method. Let's do it. The every JavaScript method tests whether all elements in the array pass the test implemented by the provided function. It returns a Boolean value. So, what I mean by this, if everything in our array matches a rule or a statement, return true. Otherwise, return false. So I'm going to do it once again with the scores. Const scores equal, and then let's have some scores. There we go. I think that's enough. We have an array of scores. Now, well, let's put something else. Let's put test results, sure. Let's pretend we are a teacher in a classroom and we have some test results. Now, someone has asked us to check if all of our students have received over 30%. Okay, we just want to know if the students have got over 30%. Well, I could do this with every. I would do it like this. So let's get our array, so test results, and then use every, and then check. So I'm going to get the test results. I'm going to get results. Once again, I'm calling this whatever I want. And for each result, I need to check that it is larger than 30. Okay? So that's how I would do it. Once again, I can call this whatever I want. It really doesn't matter. I can call it I can call it X. It just means for every item in our array. So for the sake of readability, I'm going to call it result. And let's console log this to see what we get. So we should get a Boolean of true because all our results are indeed over 30. So I know I've put this in a console log, but another option is to actually save this as something. So if I saw this as const class has class passed equal. So if I console log class, or maybe just class passed true, that makes more sense readability wise. Console log class passed true. However, if I put one of these to 26, we get a false. This is because not every one of our items in the array matches this rule. Okay? So that is how every works. Once again, I'm going to ask you to do it yourself. So make a note of this because this is going in a second. This essentially is the syntax. So this bit right here on an array, and boom, there it goes. Okay, so in this example, I'm going to make a new array. I'm going to say const array animals, and then I'm going to have a cat, not cot, a cat, a rat, a dog, a mouse, and that's it. So that is my array of animals. I want you to tell me if all the animals in our array, if all the animals' length, so the length of the string is equal to 3. So equal to 3, right? So you need to write a line of code that will essentially give us a true or false value based on this rule. Okay? So write code that will return true or false if every string in the array is equal to 3 in length. Okay, so once again, I'm going to leave you to it. Please have a go at this yourself, and I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so the way I would do it is this. I would grab my animals array, I would use every, and then I'm going to pass through an animal for each animal, for each animal length, so this is a property that we used before, deeply equals 3, and then let's store the answer, or let's just console log it for now. We get a false. This is because mouse is 5 characters long. If we, however, change this to ant, then we will get a true, because of all our animals, so all these strings in our array would be 3 characters in length. So once again, I could also store this as something, so I'm just going to cut this out, and let's store this as const 3-letter animals, or is a 3-letter animal because it's going to return a true or false, is 3-letter animals, is 3-letter animals, true. And if we change this to anteater, we get a false. Okay, so that is how every works. I think we're ready to move on. In this next section, I want to take a moment to talk to you about split and how it works. Let's do it. The split JavaScript method divides a string into an ordered list of substrings, and it puts these substrings into an array and returns the array. The division is done by searching for a pattern where the pattern is provided as the first parameter in the method's call. Okay, so what I mean by this is this. Let's get a string. I'm going to say sentence, and let's put I will have what she is having. So there is our sentence. Now, I can use split, so I'm just going to console log this out. I can use split, so if I grab the sentence and just use split like that, so hold on, let's put a space in between. Let's get a console log out. I have now split this string by the spaces. So by this space, by this space, by this space, by this space. So now I have an array of strings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 elements. I have an array of 7 strings or 7 elements. Okay, because we have split them out and put them into an array. So that is pretty cool. Okay. So I'm just going to get this, and instead of console logging it out, I'm going to save it as something. So const words that make up the sentence. So if I console log words now, I will indeed have an array of all the words that make up my sentence. And now if I go into that array, so this is how we go into an array. If you remember, we open up our square brackets. I can get the first word. So I can get the second word, which is will, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. So that is pretty cool. I can also, so I'm just gonna console log words, split out by individual letter. So now I have this sentence broken up by letter and spaces too. So if you see here, I space, will, space, have, and so on. So now if I go into, I shouldn't call this words anymore, I'm going to call it letters. I can go into the first, that will give me an I, letters. I can go into the second, that will just give me an empty. I can go into the second, which will just give me an empty space. I can go into the third, or index number 2, and that'll give me a W, and so on, and so on, and so on. Okay, and finally, I could just do that, which isn't really useful to us, but it will just put the sentence in its own array. Great. So just like always, I'm going to delete this now in order for you to have a go. So make a note of this, and it's gone. Let's get a sentence up. So here we have a sentence, and it's going to be, come on, baby, light my fire. I want you to get the third word out of this for me. How would you do that using code? So get the third word from the sentence using code. I'm going to pause here while you have a go at doing this. We did cover it in everything we just learned, so feel free to have a look back or Google. The choice is up to you. I'm going to pause here while you do this. Okay, so the way we would do this is I would get the sentence itself, use split in order to split out by space. So let's put in a space. Okay, let's save this as something. So const words. So now if I console log words, I would get the words. And we want the third, so index 0, 1, 2. So I would simply go 2. And there we have it. We have the third word in our array. So once again, I could choose to store this as something, or like word, store that here. So now our variable word is the third word. Amazing. I think we're now ready to carry on. Okay, it's now time for some array work. We have learned a lot about arrays in these past few lessons, and I really want to put it all together. So this next section is going to be quite difficult, so please don't be scared if you find yourself really struggling. It's meant to be hard. I really want to throw you in the deep end. The reason why I'm doing this is because I'm going to give you plenty of time to solve this by yourself, And if you don't get it, don't worry. That's what I'm here for. We're going to go through the answers together. Once you have completed this section, or once you have watched this section, I really would advise to make a note of this section and practice it by yourself. There's going to be a few ways to solve each of the challenges, so practice solving it in loads of different ways if you wish. Okay, let's do it. Okay, welcome to this section on array work. As mentioned, this is going to be quite a tough section, so please don't beat yourself up over it if you don't get it. That's what I'm here for. We're going to go through all the answers together. So what I need from you is get up your code editor, and in your index.js file, I just want you to write this. Okay? So go ahead and do that now. Pause if you need. We are going to be using everything we've learned in the previous sections about array work in order to write functions to help us solve these problems. We have a lot to get through, okay? So this is going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so each of these is going to take the same format. I'm going to ask you to use a JavaScript method to write a function that does something. In this case, I want you to convert something into something else. So convert Fahrenheit values into Celsius values. You're going to use a function to do this and write your code here. This exercise, or these exercises, will involve some form of Googling. For example, you're going to have to Google how to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius if you don't know already, which I definitely don't. Okay? So I am going to pause here while you do this. The first one will be hard, so have a go at doing it anyway. If you don't get it, I'll go through the answer with you, and hopefully that should give you a clue into how to solve the rest of these as well. So pause here, have fun, Google, go wild, and I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so the way I would do this is, well, first off, I actually need to get an array. So I'm just going to use this array right here, const Fahrenheit, I'm going to call it. And I'm literally just going to copy that. So now we have an array of Fahrenheit, and we need to convert it to Celsius. So, well, you'd probably Google how to convert one to the other. So here we go, Fahrenheit in Celsius, or Fahrenheit to Celsius, should I say. And we know that we can use this formula. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to paste it here so we can see it at all times. So now we know to get something in Celsius that from Fahrenheit, I would have this number minus 32 multiplied by 5/9, and that will give me the Celsius value. So get Celsius, well, Celsius, so const Celsius array, because we have to do this for every single item in our array. So I'd grab the Fahrenheit array and use map, so the JavaScript method that we learnt earlier, to map over each of these and apply this logic to change it into Celsius. So const Celsius array equals getting the Fahrenheit array. So I'm getting the Fahrenheit, I'm getting this, and I'm using the JavaScript method of map to essentially change each one of these. So in my array of Fahrenheit, I could put value, and for each value, I would take away 32 and multiply it by 5/9. Just going to put this in parentheses as well, so it's easier to read. Now, I could do something like this. So I could say const or let Celsius array and then assign. So we're going to do our calculation. We're going to make a array, so a changed array of Celsius, and we're going to assign it here, and then that's going to get stored as a global variable. So now if I console, first of all, we need to actually call the function get Celsius, and then it's console log Celsius array. We would get -5, 60, 105. So we've done it. Amazing. However, I'm just going to show you a quick trick. Well, it's not really a trick, it's just a way of returning things out of functions that will be useful for this section. So instead of me getting our new array, storing it here, and then storing it as a global so that we can console log it out here after calling the function, I could just do this. So now if I call my function, so console log get Celsius and call it, I'm returning this, okay? I'm returning this array. So that is a neat way of doing it. And once again, you will see that indeed, if we use this array, then we're going to get this back. Okay. So that is looking good. Now, based on what we have done here, I want you to have a go at doing the next one. Are you ready for it? Let's do it. I should also say that there are many ways of solving this. Like you could have passed through the array into here. You could have done so many things. So this is just one example of solving it. If you have thought of a different way, please do share it with me on Twitter. I would absolutely love to see. Okay, next challenge. Let's clear this. And I'm just going to uncomment this out so we don't have to see it show up in our console log. Okay, so I want you to solve this in the exact same way that we did before. So make sure to have a go at this yourself. Please do use Google. These are quite hard. We are going to be using everything that we have learned so far. So also feel free to go back to the section about sum or anything that you think might help with this section about dealing with falsy values. Okay? So once again, I am going to pause here. Please do have a go at doing this yourself, and I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so once again, I would start off by making an array so I can test this out. I'm going to call it array 1 or array, because we already have an array here. Oh no, we didn't call it array. Let's just call this array. And then I'm simply just going to take this array that's already pre-made for us. And we need to check, we need this to return a true, because some of these are falsy. Okay, some of these are falsy, so we need a true to come back. This, for example, is a falsy. So I would do this by grabbing the array and using sum, because we are told to use sum, and the syntax for sum. So we would need to pass something through, so an element in our array. I'm just going to call it element or item. And for each item, we are going to check if it is falsy. So if you remember back on our lesson about truthy or falsy, I'm going to check if the item is falsy. And I'm just going to return this. And then let's check for falsy and invoke the function. Just going to console log that too so we can see the answer. And we get a true. Okay, this is because none is falsy. If I change this to be a 1, for example, we get a false because none of the items are now falsy. So let's change that back to not a number because we know that is falsy, and we get a true. So that is how sum works. It checks if any, so if some of the items in our array match a certain rule, then we return a Boolean response. And in this case, we are checking if something is falsy. So that was what the bang is doing. Okay, it's checking for a false or falsy item. So once again, you could have done this in a few different ways. It's totally up to you. If you've managed to do this in a different way, then please do let me know. Please do share it with me on Twitter. I'd love to see your solution. I'm all about creative solutions. So yeah, hit me up. Okay, I think it's now time to move on to the next question. So once again, I'm just going to get rid of this and let's carry on. Using the reduce JavaScript method, write a function that will return the total number of characters in an array, so that should be of characters in an array of strings. So for example, this array of 3 strings, rabbit, football, and cracking, returns 22, as there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 characters in total. Okay, so I want you to have a go at doing this. Please use the reduce JavaScript method to do it. So we just recently covered that one, and I'll see you in a bit. Once again, as a reminder, this is all you need to write out in your code editor, and your code goes here. Okay, so hopefully you've had a go at doing that yourself. If you haven't quite got it, don't worry, that's what I'm here for. We're going to go through the answer together. So let's do it. Okay, so the first thing I would do is just create an array, so const words, let's call it. And I'm just going to get this array, and I need the, so when I console log get total, I need to get the 22 value. So, well, first off, let's get the array itself and use reduce. Now we know that reduce works with a total and a value, and it accumulates. Okay, so we're going to put that, this is the syntax. I'm just going to write the syntax for now. So that is it. We need an arrow function here, and we'll put total and value. So that is the syntax, if you remember. Oops, that should be a plus. That is the syntax, if you remember from our lessons. Let's get working on this. Okay, so we know that this is the total and this is the value. So this is going to be rabbit, football, cracking. So what we need to do here is get the total. Whether each time we add to the total, we don't want to add the value to the string itself. We don't want to add rabbit and then football and cracking. That won't really do much. It doesn't make sense. Instead of adding the word or the value itself, so perhaps let's change this to word now, because we know that's going to be a word. We want to get the word length. Okay? And then one more thing that I need to do is start from 0. So this is what I said about Googling. If you Googled this, you Googled how to do this, you might have got this as a response. So let's see if that has worked. This is because we're going to be starting from 0. So console log get total. Let's invoke it. And of course, we need to return something from the function. So there we go. We get 22. If I got rid of the 0, well, that wouldn't really make much sense. Rabbit 88. This is because we are telling it to start from 0. Okay? It's an initial value. Once again, there are many ways to do this. This is just one way that I would do it. If you have your own and are really proud of it and would like to share it, please do tweet me. I'd love to see, and I'd love to share your solution with others too. So go ahead and do that. This is how I would choose to solve this problem. Hopefully your Googling's getting a lot better. Google is such an important tool of a software developer, and I hope you can see why this is a total Google exercise, and Google would have helped you with this. Okay, I think we're ready to carry on. So I'm just going to get rid of that console log once again, so we don't have anything in our console, and let's get to it. Using the every JavaScript method, I want you to write a function that checks whether a number or every number in an array is a square number. So for example, this would come back as true, as 9 is a square number, 3 times 3 is 9, 16 is a square number, as 4 times 4 is 16, and so on. This as well, 9 times 9 is 81. So they're all square numbers. Okay. How do you think you would use the every JavaScript method in order to check whether every number in an array is a square number? I'm going to give you a hint for this. This square number part is going to involve some Googling, as it is a very useful JavaScript method that we have not covered that exists that will help you with this. To give you a clue, it starts with math. Okay, it starts off with math, sort of like math random and math round and math seal. So there we go. Have a go at Googling this. Have a go at doing this yourself. Once again, this is a Google exercise as well. So have fun, go for it, and we'll go through the answer together. Okay, so hopefully you've had a go at doing that. Let's go through the answer now. So once again, I'm going to start off with making an array. So const square, or let's just say numbers, because we don't know if they're square or not. That's what we're checking. We're checking if all of them are square numbers. So I'm just going to get this array, and we know that it's true. So we need this to return a Boolean of true. So I will get the numbers, and I'm going to use every. So, and get the syntax for every. So it's going to include me getting an element from an array. And for each element, we're going to be writing a rule. So I've chosen to call this num just because these are numbers. You can choose to call this I, or you can literally choose to call it number. So for each number in our numbers array, so this one, this one, this one, I need to check if this number is a square number. So I did say to have a go at finding another JavaScript method that can help us with this. And there is something called math square root. So here we go, math square root. As you can see on the MDN website, the math square root function returns the square root of a number. So this is going to help us do this. So I'm simply going to get this right here. So I'm going to get that, and I'm going to put through the number. So I'm going to use this to get the square root of the number. Okay, so if I put through a 9 here, I will get a 3. And now I use modulus 1. So let's get modulus 1, because all square numbers are made up of full integers. So I need to check if whatever the outcome of this. So I can actually console log that. Console log. I'm just going to put this in here. Let's refresh. It's console log. I'm just going to call check squares. I'm going to invoke the function. It's a 3. So that is a full number, okay? That is a full number. So if the full number modulus 1 gives no remainder, so we are literally going to check if it is divisible by 1 and leaves no remainder, then we know that it is a square number. Okay, so I'm just going to return this, return. I'm just going to get rid of that 2. So now I'm just going to put on one line. I'm going to tell you what this line of code means. I'm getting the numbers array, and for every number in my numbers array, when I'm getting the number and I'm getting the square root of the number, so as we saw with 9, that was a 3, so that will return a 3, and 3 modulus 1 leaves no remainder, so it is a full number. We are essentially checking if the square root of this number is a full integer. And if it is a full integer, we know that number is a square number, and we can return true, as we know all of these are square numbers. So now if I put through something that is not a square number, I will get false. This is because the square root of 80 is not a full number. So it does not pass this rule, and we fail this returning a true. So let's put it back to all square numbers. Once again, this was quite math heavy, and it did involve you Googling this. So I do hope you've got it. If not, don't worry. That's what I'm here for. That's why we went through the solution together. If you have thought of a different way of solving this, then please also do share it with me. I'd absolutely love to see your solution. Okay, great. Let's carry on. If you are thinking like, oh, how come you've put parentheses around this? We don't actually have to. So there we go. I've got rid of it there. And we can also get rid of it here too. And here as well. It is not necessary, okay? It's just an option for us. Okay. Next challenge. I'm just going to get rid of this here and clear out our console log. Okay, next question. Using an array method, so this time I'm not going to tell you which one, I want you to write a function that returns the string elements of an array that have a given length or larger. So for example, if I was to pass through this array and the number 5, I should get the words Florida and phone back. Okay, so we're going to be using two things in order to do this. So as a clue, I'm going to have const words array. I'm going to get this here. And I'll have const number 5. And then I would use that in my function in order to return something that will give me back Florida and phone based on these. If I was to pass through a 3, well, I would expect everything to be returned. So have a go at doing this. I'm going to pause here while you do it. So make sure to take this down in your code editor and go ahead. Okay, so the way I would do this is like this. So I'd get the words array first, return the words array, and then I would use the filter method because we're essentially filtering out, we're trying to find which of the elements match a certain rule. And then this is the syntax for filter. So I'm going to get a word, or as I've chosen to call word, this is the syntax. It just means that for every item in our array, we want to apply a certain rule, which we're going to write here. So if the word length equals or is larger than the number, so in this case it is 3, well, return that. Let's see if that has worked. So console log get words. And let's call the function. And there we go. Florida dog phone. If I change this to 5, we will get Florida and phone. Now the reason it's written like this is that we are essentially writing this function to take parameters or arguments. So for example, if I was to console log out this and now use get words and pass through this array and the number 5, and then have an array here